But one thing that I kind of feel like is perhaps holding me back from moving on to the next stage a little bit is kind of the importance I keep putting on getting it right and having to do things perfectly. Because I feel like that kind of stresses me out, and that in itself is actually stopping perhaps some of what I am doing from working, just because I'm constantly trying so hard to get it right.
So welcome to this week's Therapeutic Tuesday. Therapeutic Tuesdays is where I film mini sessions with people exploring a range of different things, but often related to supporting recovery from fatigue-related conditions. This mini session was with Becky, and the kind of initial reach out for the session was about wanting to calm and settle the nervous system, support being in a healing state. But what became clear to me in the kind of unfolding, and often the way that these sessions work is that there are kind of layers of perspective and understanding that become clearer over time, was that the level of trying to get it right, like being a perfectionist or perfectionism, was its own cause of stress in the nervous system. And then we start to explore, well, what's the underlying reason behind needing to get it right? Often with achiever patterns, helper patterns, perfectionist patterns, controlling patterns, there's often underlying reasons why we do those things. And discovering and uncovering those can sometimes be quite important and very, very helpful to supporting the transformational and healing process. So that's where we go, that's what we get into in this session with Becky. No, we're all good. Nice to meet you. Thank you for being part of my little experiment.
Oh, no, thank you. It sounds like a really good opportunity. So yeah, I'm happy to be here, and thank you for talking with me.
No, of course, my pleasure. So this is a bit of an experiment in as much as it's not kind of a full deep dive kind of session, but it's a bit more than just a kind of ask me a question and I'll kind of give you an answer. The idea is to let it be a bit of an exploration around the kind of thing you want to explore. So obviously I got just the copy and paste from the email you sent to Jenny, but do you want to just give me a bit more context?
Yeah, sure. So I've been doing quite well on my recovery journey, and I've kind of got to a place where thank goodness, like I'm in a place where I'm starting to like actually feel better for like going out and doing things, whereas before it was just not like that at all. But one thing that I kind of feel like is perhaps holding me back from moving on to the next stage a little bit is kind of the importance I keep putting on getting it right and having to do things perfectly. Because I feel like that kind of stresses me out, and that in itself is actually stopping perhaps some of what I am doing from working, just because I'm constantly trying so hard to get it right, and it's kind of in two areas as well. It's kind of in the medical side, so in all of my appointments that I do, the nutrition, the psychology, other appointments I do outside of the Optimum Health Clinic, and also on like a personal side as well, which does affect my health. So like if I'm trying to go out somewhere and I know that will be good for my health, I kind of feel like I've got to get it right, I've got to be perfect, like I can't go unless I can't, can I go if I have symptoms? And it's just this sense of I've got to get it all right. I actually think if I could learn to kind of drop that, I feel like the next phase might just kind of flow a bit more easily.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can you give me a bit more of a sense of whereabouts you are, like in your recovery journey at this point? Like, I want to get a bit of a sense of the stage you're at in terms of like what you can do, what you can't do. I'm guessing every day is a bit different, but maybe a bit of a sense of your kind of routine and kind of where you are at the moment.
Sure. So I would say I'm about like maybe like 45%, 50%. I don't know. I want to get it right. I want to tell you the right answer, but I don't know. I think like day to day, I work from home. I used to be a teacher, and I had to, I very reluctantly, I kind of was made to stop rather than gave up, in a good way. And I was very much like kind of bed bound for half the day and stuff. And now I work from home usually 2 or 3 hours a day. I do a bit of admin stuff, sometimes more, sometimes less. And I'm able to walk like a bit more, go on walks and do yoga. And I would kind of say half my day is filled with doing like my job, working from home, and the other half of the day is kind of filled with trying to do all those things that keep me afloat, like the meditation and the yoga and going on like gentle walks and things. Kind of social things I managed about like 2 a week, sometimes 3. It's just such a huge improvement from where I was. Like I wasn't anywhere near that before.
What do you put the progress that you've made down to? I'm sure it's not as simple as being any kind of one thing. I'm sure it's been a number of things. But if you were just to summarize, again, it just helps me see what's had an impact and what's kind of been helpful.
It's a really difficult one because it is kind of, it is a lot of
Sure.
things. I mean, I do both the nutrition and psychology program, and I mean, to put it bluntly, I wasn't getting anywhere before I found the Optimum Health Clinic, and that's kind of when my progress started. I definitely think probably one of the biggest things has just been working on calming the nervous system a bit, trying to, it kind of all rolls in together, but like trying to deal with trauma. I've had like a lot of the trauma subtype and things. I don't know, it's really difficult because you can't say any one thing.
Yeah. What's your fear? So there's just to kind of summarize, there's 2 different kind of scenarios. One is in terms of your kind of program, like getting it right in terms of the approach and having the right pieces, both with Optimum Health Clinic and anything else that you're doing, but kind of almost the jigsaw of recovery, making sure you get that right and having the right pieces together. And then there's the more kind of moment to moment, day to day, like, should I bounce the boundaries and do this thing, or should I not? And kind of knowing where those edges are. Is that right?
Yeah. I would say that's pretty much correct. It's both of those things. And I think both of them come down to this. I've got to get it right. I've got to be perfect in those ways.
And answer this question as freely as you can. If there's something that you say in hindsight, you said, I want that to go out in the video, you can tell me afterwards and I can make edits and stuff. But yeah, sure. What's your history in terms of kind of inner critic when you were a kid, kind of getting things right or wrong, and how that was received or not received? Yeah, like what's your history around having to get things right?
It was very strict. It was I did have a very strict upbringing, and I was always made to feel like I was very naughty, even though I don't think a lot of people did think that I was naughty at all or anything. But it was always people like you if you're getting it right, don't they? Mm-hmm. People, it's what, I guess this is like the helper bit as well, but it makes other people happy, you getting it right in whatever it is, whether it's my degree. Like, I'll strive to get everything right in that, because it's what pleases your tutors. And in my work as well, and then going back into childhood, there was kind of a lot of responsibility. Things for me were, I guess there was a lot of rules, like as children, like my mum had told me in later years that the reason we were never allowed to go to a hotel on holiday was because my dad could not handle us like laughing, because it would like trigger him to be very angry. And often in the garden, me and my brother, we wouldn't be being naughty at all, but we would just be laughing, having fun. And that would really, I mean, that's not okay. No, you're being too loud. Think about everybody else, to the point where neighbours would like pop their heads over and be like, they're fine, they're children. Yeah. But I very much had a not a particularly usual kind of upbringing. And I guess I quite quickly learned that by getting it right and by doing what you want, what people want you to do, they accept you and they like you, and that's kind of the easiest way.
Yeah, and I'm going to take it as, I think it goes a step further than that as well. So that there's a kind of having to get it right, you know, either in a kind of achieverish, like kind of being successful, or just like not necessarily achieving, but like getting it right, like doing it the right way, because we believe that through doing that we'll get love and recognition and acceptance. But I think what also happens sometimes, and I think it's probably part of what's happened here, it's not so much about it is partly about getting love and acceptance, but it's also about emotional safety. That if you don't get it right, then as a child, it sounds like you felt that things weren't then emotionally safe. So they're kind of, it's almost another layer of pressure around it. So it's not just, if I get things right, I get more love and that feels good, and therefore I need to get it right. It's more stressful than that. It's like, if I don't get things right, then I'm not safe. Then it's without, we don't, if you want to give me details, you can, and I can cut them out. But I don't think I necessarily need the details here to understand. But when you have one of your parents that has a kind of very kind of tightly held thing around spontaneity and freedom, and the kind of the reality of being kids is we need to be allowed to get things wrong all the time, because that's how we learn and that's how we evolve. That if you kind of equate that to either withdrawal of love or kind of harsh edges and boundaries that feel kind of intimidating and scary, then we start to internalize that, right? Because one of the things that we do as kids is we're figuring out how to function in the world. And we're taking the blueprint of how our parents, how our teachers, how grandparents, whoever it is around us, like how they're responding to us, basically becomes like a map for the world. So then as an adult, as we're kind of navigating and moving through the world, we're almost literally kind of pulling out the map and going, well, I must get it right, because if I don't get it right, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, definitely.
I think what's happened is you've almost internalized your dad, and probably your mum's cautiousness around your dad of not wanting to kind of upset that pattern, that you're then, even though you're not around that, and it sounds like day to day, that's not your living environment anymore, but it kind of is, because it's internalized.
Yeah, that definitely really resonate. Yeah, it really resonates. That literally kind of summarizes what I kind of feel like, because although it seems silly, like I'm out of that situation, that's not my living situation anymore, but I do still carry it every day. I do still, and I see it in myself, which it terrifies the life out of me. And I do think, like, oh, thank God I'm only doing it to myself, well, hopefully not someone else at the moment. But it does, it makes a huge amount of sense, like where the pressures come from, and what you were saying about feeling safe. It does. In a weird way, it does feel safe. It feels safe to put that kind of, I've got to get it perfect on myself. I guess because that's what what I knew, really.
Yeah, and then let's take that piece of information and just park that for a second. Then let's just look at kind of the other related piece. Then we'll look at how they kind of fit together. Sure. The other related piece is you've been living with a severe chronic illness, which is by definition unpredictable and variable. Yeah. And so there's not a kind of clear medical kind of like, right, it's not like you kind of break your leg and you go to the doctor and say, right, we're going to put it in a cast, you can have some painkillers if you want, if you do this rehab and this and this and this, then this is going to happen. So you still got a broken leg and it's still shit, but you've got clarity. And so there might be some frustration that you have to kind of cancel some things and it's like a bit awkward, but there's not this massive like underlying, what's wrong with me? Why is it wrong with me? Should I do this? Should I do that? If I do this, that's going to happen. So you're dealing with a situation which is inherently unsettling, and for even if someone doesn't have the history you have about getting things right, is still psycho-emotionally really kind of unsettling and can create a lot of anxiety with it. And then we add in the fact that sometimes you can do something and feel better for doing it, and other times you can do the same thing and feel worse for doing it, right?
Yeah.
So that creates this kind of sense of like, well, do I do it? Do I not do it? Yeah. So I think what you've got here is a bit of a kind of perfect storm of the current situation that you're in terms of your health and the uncertainty and the kind of figuring out, with a historical pattern around the way that you get safe is you get it right. So you're trying to get safety for your health by getting it right. You're trying to get safety in terms of calming your maladaptive stress response and getting into a healing state. But the keys to the vault are you have to get it right. In a situation where it's not black and white and it's not to get it right, in a sense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it feels like a bit of a catch-22. It's like, oh, yeah, it's a difficult situation, definitely.
Yeah. So here's how I would approach trying to kind of work with this. So if you can see it, you don't have to be it. If you can see because at the moment what's happening is when this pattern plays out, although I'm guessing that you've clearly got enough awareness to recognize it's happening. That's why you're articulating it to me and we're kind of having a kind of conversation.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing that often the awareness comes after the event rather than at the time.
That like, yeah, definitely.
You kind of look back and you go, oh my God, I spent the whole day stressing about whether I'm going to the event in 2 weeks' time and trying to make the right decision. Or you kind of look back on, kind of go, oh my God, since the last time I spoke to my practitioner, I've been stressing about whether I should start that supplement first or that supplement. Like, you can see that the pattern's kind of been playing out. So I talk a lot about awareness and the importance of it. If you can see it, you don't have to be it, because it gives you the choice to see you're doing the pattern. Normally when we become aware of patterns initially, we become aware of them in a reflective kind of way. So we see it in hindsight. We go, actually, yes, I was doing that today or last week or whatever. What we want to start to do is to cultivate the awareness at the time the pattern's happening. If you can see it at the time, that then gives you more choice. And I'm guessing from the work you've already done in the clinic, you've got some tools that you can use in terms of, be it stop process, be it EFT, whatever it might be. But what I would encourage, that I think you'll find helpful as well, is to be able to see that it's happening, to go, okay, right now I'm trying to get it right. And I'm trying to get it right because I think that that's what's going to give me safety, because that's what I was taught, but actually it doesn't work. Like, to be able to kind of almost penetrate the pattern with your awareness, that it kind of takes the grip out of it, right? Because if you got everything right all of the time, would that mean you're safe?
Not necessarily, no, not really. Like, there shouldn't really be a link, should there, between your safety and getting it right? Yeah.
Because you could get everything right in the moment and get it wrong for the next moment, because what's right is not a objective, definitive fact. It's a very subjective, variable thing that's different in different ways. Safety is not something that you get. Safety is a feeling that you cultivate and you create. Does that kind of make sense? So it's like trying to do something to get safety. Like, I need to get this right, or I need to achieve this thing, or I need to get the love of that person, like whatever the strategy we think we have. Or, another common pattern, I need to think about all the things that could go wrong, figure out all the things that I would do in response to all the things that could go wrong, to know that I can handle it, to know that I can feel safe. when
Right.
we approach safety in that way, we're activating more of our brain and our mind. By definition of doing that, we're speeding up our nervous system. When we speed up our nervous system, we go more and more into our head. So it becomes a self-perpetuating pattern.
Yeah.
But safety isn't there.
No.
Safety is a feeling, right? In fact,
Right.
probably for many of us, the feelings the times we feel most safe are the times we feel the most deeply relaxed, like the most in a kind of calm, grounded, healing state.
Yeah.
So by definition of trying to get safety by getting it right, you're actually giving yourself the opposite of safety, because you're giving your brain more to do to figure out how to get it right. You'll get it right or you won't get it right, but even if you get it right, it'll be the wrong thing 5 minutes later probably anyway.
Yeah.
But you're getting further and further away from the actual
what I want. Yeah.
of safety.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, when you put it like that, it does make you kind of realize, like, and think, why am I doing this? Like, why is it so important? Why am I making it so important? And is that actually the right way to get it? And you're right, because it's not, because when I am like that, in that kind of state of I need to get it right, I'm anything but relaxed. Like, my body's completely, my stomach muscles are completely tense, and just and I always feel more tired. And like, that's what I came into this with it being about, and that horrible kind of fuzzy brain tired as well. So it makes a lot of sense, needing to kind of recognize it and understand that getting it right isn't actually, like, why am I doing that? Is that so important? Is that giving me what I'm actually after? Which, yeah, perhaps isn't the need to have everything perfect. It's the need to feel a bit more secure in my life and a bit more safe, maybe. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's almost like, by definition of the harder you try to get it right, actually, the more frustrated you become. Because you get further away from the actual feeling that you're trying to get from getting it right.
Definitely.
So to break this down, so it's almost like the strategy that I'm kind of recommending is, and we'll come back in a minute to how you get the awareness at the time that you need the awareness.
Yeah.
But it's almost like, if you can be aware that I'm trying to get it right, so I can give myself a feeling of safety, and you can almost remind yourself, because I was taught that the way to feel safe is to get it right. And I know that's actually not true anymore.
Yeah.
It's almost like, well, in that moment, what can you do that's going to give yourself a feeling of safety? And that probably is using the various tools that you've already got, in terms of calming your nervous system down, kind of interrupting the kind of pattern on a kind of more cognitive level, and kind of coming more grounded then into your body, where the natural feeling of safety actually arises. And then it might still be that you need to make a decision about something. It's like, feeling safe doesn't necessarily negate the need to decide, do I do A or B, in either a kind of medical kind of plan scenario, or a kind of activity, do I do or do I don't. But if you're doing it from a place of already feeling safe, it takes all the stress and all the tension and all the anxiety out of whichever way you go in that decision. Yeah,
because I think if you were coming from a place of already feeling safe, I can't imagine having that kind of internal issue. If you're already feeling safe, I can't actually imagine myself in that situation, feeling safe already, and thinking, like, should I be taking this supplement now, or should I be taking it? Because you wouldn't feel like that if you were already in a place of feeling like everything's okay. And because it's kind of like an oxymoron almost, isn't it?
I think so. And it's also, different situations are different, right? If you were performing heart surgery on a baby, getting it right would really matter, right? It's like, if it's whether you start, and I just invented a scenario, but whether you're starting with this supplement or that supplement in a new program probably doesn't matter. And if it does matter, you probably would have already been told by a practitioner, this is the order you should do it in. If it's deciding whether you do or don't go to a event, which is part of the reason why I was asking about the stage of recovery that you're at, that the stage that you're at you need to bounce the boundaries. And if you don't sometimes have little mini crashes along the way, you're probably playing it too safe anyway. And that's not an excuse to go crazy and just kind of, possibly, but that you need to be finding the edges. And if you're not testing the edges, then you're probably a bit too safe. Earlier on in the process, I weigh it a bit differently and say, actually, you need to be really careful not to go near the edges. But for where you are now, you need to be bouncing the boundaries a little bit.
Yeah.
In terms of how do you get yourself to be aware of the pattern when the pattern's happening? So I think having some reminders would be good. Like, what you might want to do over the next, given that this probably is happening most days in different ways, is maybe set some reminders on your phone every few hours over the next 2 or 3 days. Or, if you have, or put some post-it notes at different places around kind of where you live that you kind of have to pick up and move. One of the tricks that I quite like is to have a post-it note somewhere that you're going to see it. And each time you pass it, you have to move it somewhere else that you're going to see it. So otherwise you get used to seeing something, right? So if you just put it on, I don't know, at the bathroom door, every time you go to the bathroom, you see it. After a while, you stop seeing it. You put it on the bathroom door, then you go to the bathroom, you have to take it, and then put it on the kitchen cupboard. And then next time you come to the kitchen cupboard, you've got to take it on the outside. But so you're kind of engaging with the reminder can be quite a helpful way of reminding yourself. But kind of put a bit of a spotlight on this pattern over the next kind of, let's say, week or so. And then each time you see it, remember what we were saying, that see it for what it is. And if you need to use the stop process or EFT or another one of the tools just to kind of settle things, that probably will be helpful. But then to kind of remember, I'm doing this because I'm trying to get safety. This will never give me safety. This will actually make me feel more unsafe. And then work to calm and settle your system to feel the safety that you feel when your nervous system is in a much more calm, grounded place, and then act from there. Yeah,
definitely. I think that sounds like something I can do, definitely, and having the reminders about. And I think I probably need to write it down on the reminder as well, that if to remind myself that actually by trying to get it right, I'm actually giving myself the opposite of what it is that I really need. Yeah, that sounds like a really good idea, definitely.
And remember that these kind of patterns are deeply ingrained.
Yeah.
And I'm taking this, the path that I'm taking with this, on the assumption that you're already doing work around some of the deeper trauma and emotional impacts around this. So I'm not talking about that to negate it. I'm just think that's probably a little bit too sensitive to expect you to explore that in this context. So I'm making the assumption that the other work is being done kind of with that. But in terms of how it's manifesting in this way, I think seeing it for what it is, and as we were just saying, reminding yourself that the pattern gives you the opposite, then that's probably the pattern break to allow you then to kind of go, actually, I know how to get safety. Safety's not here. Safety's in my body. And by coming more into my body, I'm then more in touch with that feeling of safety.
Yeah, definitely. I think I could definitely do some work on that on myself. Yeah.
Okay, great. Any questions about that?
No, I think that's it. The only thing that I would ask is, would it be the same when applying it to like a situation about not just the health, about like going out? So for example, it's I don't know, I've been invited to go over to a friend's house and see them, and I'm thinking like, oh, I can't go because my health isn't perfect. Like I don't know, I need to be perfect in order to go there, because they won't understand, they won't accept me if I go over and I'm not, if I have brain fog and I have to speak slowly, or if I feel dizzy and I have to like lay down. I guess there's little alarm bells in my head that says, oh, that's not acceptable, you can't do that. So yeah, how would you?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think there's a few different layers to this. It depends upon the people. There are some people which just aren't particularly sensitive or understanding of people's situations. And if that's the case, some, most people had experiences of family members or friends that have just been like, we all get tired, kind of get over it.
Yeah.
So pay attention to make sure that you're being around people which are nurturing and supportive. But I think more the issue here is your own self-love and self-worth, in a sense, is also tied up to the pattern we spoke about and things that I imagine are related to that pattern. That you are lovable when you're perfect, and you're not lovable when you're imperfect.
Yeah,
so
that's
it's
it.
almost like it's safer to be home in a kind of like, by yourself and, whoever you kind of live with, where you kind of feel you're kind of in your kind of comfort zone. But then at the stage of recovery you're at, it's actually really appropriate to start coming back more out into the world. But then it's kind of like, if you're not going to go back into the world in the way you were before, which was probably, and I'm making sweeping assumptions here, but I'm assuming kind of pushing and driving yourself to be the person you thought everyone else, you thought you should be to be lovable.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm guessing part of what's happened in your healing process is that you've been learning to cultivate your own self-love and self-worth and accepting who you are as you are.
Yeah.
Then it's almost like, well, how do I reintegrate that as I come back into the world? Like, how are other people?
Yeah.
What you're probably doing is projecting the judgments that you used to have of yourself onto other people and expecting that they're thinking all of that stuff towards you.
Yeah, that does sound about right.
Far too consumed by their own psychodrama, spending all their time and energy doing that. Having said that, the good thing about it is, assuming that they're not the kind of people I was describing before, which I think they're probably not, then it's your projections onto them. So the great thing is that's something you can work with. So if you're imagining kind of going out thinking, well, like, what if I have brain fog, and what if I have to leave early, or what if I have to be fussy about what I'm eating, like, how are you going to respond and kind of handle that? What I would recommend is to drop them a note beforehand and say, look, I'd love to come and see you. These are some of the current limitations that I have, and I just want you to know that might be the case. And they're either okay with that or they're kind of not okay with that. Let's assume they are okay with that. Your inner critic is going to have all kinds of story as you're bouncing the boundaries and you're kind of coming into a new environment. Use all the tools that you've got to defend against your inner critic, to stop those patterns getting carried away. You need to collect evidence that is contrary to that old narrative and that old story. So as you have experiences being around other people and being more authentic and being more vulnerable and being more of yourself and getting positive feedback for that, that becomes increasingly easy to do that. But it's a tricky transition. Like, you've gone from driving yourself in a way that you weren't being true to yourself, to connecting yourself and being true to yourself. But how does that now then come out into the world and into being around other people?
Definitely.
It's a delicate transition, and you have to be gentle and caring of yourself in that transition.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think you're right. I think it's the remembering that inner critic work when I'm in those situations as well, to kind of help that transition a little bit, because I will go backwards and I will keep going forwards as well. So
exactly. And this is, I talk about 3 types of relationship: your relationship you have with yourself, the intimate relationships that you have, and the relationships you have with the wider world. And you've done, by the sounds of it, a lot of work on your relationship with yourself. But it's now taking the next step and expanding that into being in relationship with others. And it's got a different set of challenges, but a lot of the things that you've already been doing will serve and support you in that transition. And it's just collecting evidence that actually being around people and being vulnerable is more often than not far more emotionally nourishing than putting on a front, pretending everything's okay when it's not, coming away feeling shit and feeling completely unmet and unseen. As opposed to expressing some vulnerability, and you may or may not get the response that you want, but at least you've been true to yourself in that experience.
Definitely. I always feel like that. If I go to an event or see people and I'm just trying to be the person that they want me to be, or the person that I used to be that got me so ill, I come away feeling just crap, just really awful. So you're right. It's about going there and being honest, and I guess being like ballsy enough to feel that I'll be accepted anyway, like which version of the person I am. Yeah.
Here's the thing, we reject ourselves before we give other people the chance. So what we do, if we're in these kind of patterns, we go out and we put on a front and reject ourselves, so no one else gets the chance to reject ourselves. If you can be brave enough to love and honor and be yourself, then you'll be surprised how often people will respond in a positive way towards that. And the people that don't, that's everything you need to know to not make space for those people in your life. That's the thing.
Cut those people out.
People have such a fear that if they express themselves, they're going to get rejected. And it's like, you really break that down and go, you were your authentic, true self and you got rejected. Like, fuck, why do you want that person in your life?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, but you got to take the risk to discover that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Great. Just as a final comment, that I think there's definitely, and it sounds like you've already been doing some work around it, but definitely there's a important ongoing thread here in terms of self-love and your relationship to yourself, which is created by how our parents relate to us. And given you had experiences of having to put on a front and be a certain way, that set up a bunch of patterns. And the seeing of those patterns and breaking down of those patterns and the owning and having the courage to be and live authentically is a lot of the healing work and the integration work around that.
Yeah, no, that really resonates with me, definitely.
Brilliant. Great. Any final questions that you've got?
No, that's it. That's really helped a lot. Thank you. I think I've got some clear points that I'm going to work on and strategies to put in place. And yeah, I'm looking forward to trying it. So thank you very much. Thank you for all your help.
No, of course, you're so welcome. Drop me a note in a few weeks. Let me know how you're doing. And I'm happy to do a bit of, it might be there's a bit of a follow-up that we can do here, which I'm also open. This is kind of an evolving format, kind of figuring out what works and what's helpful. But in principle, I'm open to the idea of doing a kind of a follow-up in 3 or 4 weeks on particularly this kind of piece of kind of coming back into kind of the world around people. So I think there's more to be.
Definitely.
Time today.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Thank you. I'll drop you an email in a couple of weeks' time. Thank you.
I hope that was helpful and useful. I think it's interesting putting out a series of these different sessions, because so far with these Therapeutic Tuesdays, they've been quite similar sessions at the surface, but actually we've gone to some quite different places. And so hopefully that's helpful for you guys watching, particularly if you're working with similar things, because you start to see the same kinds of issues from different angles and different perspectives. Tomorrow it's Wellness Wednesday. And for this week's Wellness Wednesday, we have an excerpt from my interview with Dr. Ben Lynch as part of the Fatigue Super Conference. Dr. Lynch is the author of Dirty Genes, which is I think probably an international bestseller at this point, which is fascinating because it's really exploring what role do genetics play, but also the way that we live our lives, how that impacts and relates to our genetics. We can have the best genetics and the worst lifestyle, or we could have terrible genetics and a great lifestyle. And how we live our life has a big impact on how our genes express themselves. So that's coming up tomorrow on Wellness Wednesday.